Hey everyone, it's Joanne Molinaro, the Korean vegan. Hope everyone's doing well. Today, I'm going to make some Jumoek Bap, also known as fist rice. And the reason it's called fist rice is because you use your hands to shape them into these fist-sized balls, and it's so delicious. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. There's so many videos on YouTube where they just take you through the recipe step by step, but I've already included the ingredients and the steps in the subtitles below. So instead of doing that, I thought we'd use this time to maybe catch up, get to know one another a little bit better, talk about things, maybe share a few stories. So this recipe, as you're going to see, contains not an insubstantial amount of kimchi. I love cooking with kimchi. It tastes so good. And you know, my mom is most proud of me when I eat kimchi, or maybe she's most proud of herself when her American daughter shamelessly steals a sliver of fiery kimchi with her fingers from the kimchi byung. You know, the one that's squatting in the back of your fridge like a rather contented troll. Who doesn't have that kimchi byung in their fridge? So whenever my mom catches me doing this, she watches me make a meal out of nothing more than rice, water, and a handful of chonggak kimchi or radish kimchi. She shakes her head and she mutters, "You're so Korean." And I know what she's thinking of. She's thinking of every single time I yelled, "I'm not Korean, I'm American," in her face throughout my very fraught adolescence as a child of immigrants. But there is some truth to her logic. There is something fundamentally Korean about not kimchi per se, because lots of people like kimchi, lots of people eat kimchi, but its role as more than just a condiment or a side dish or an exotic like foodie thing to blog about when you go to Korea. An amazing writer once wrote, "The heart is an organ of fire," to which I would reply, "The Korean heart is an organ of kimchi." Now, we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like growing up with kimchi in your house. I can still feel the prickle of my mom's anxiety over that squatting kimchi byung in our fridge whenever our next door neighbor or my friends came over after school. I remember when I used to hate the sight of kimchi at the dinner table because it signified for the millionth time that instead of eating meat and potatoes like they did in Family Ties, we'd be eating the same old boring Korean food. I remember making fun of my dad for eating kimchi with his spaghetti when my mom finally relented and cooked us an American meal. And I remember the first time I treated my entire creative writing class in college to Korean food, and one of the kids covered his nose and whispered, "God, the smell." I also remember when I finally decided to go vegan, the first thing that I was worried about was losing kimchi, losing my Koreanness. Now, one kimchi expert, this guy, I love Eric, and he is now a staff writer for the New York Times. I'm so proud of him. He wrote about kimchi. Kimchi almost never spoils. Prepared correctly and with enough salt, it can ripen for months, even years, until it becomes so concentrated in flavor that it burns the tongue and tastes wonderful when stewed. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the kimchi heart. So I married the first man I ever loved. Literally, I was, met him when I was 13, and it was love at first sight. I married him as soon as my parents would let me, which is actually after law school. And it didn't work out. We ended up getting a divorce. And after the divorce, I remember asking my therapist, will I ever love anyone the way I love my ex-husband? And this is based on that notion of first love, or 첫사랑, which if you watch Korean dramas, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think that idea, this mythical quality of the first love, sort of filtered into me because I started to doubt whether my heart even had the capacity to love anyone like that. I viewed my heart sort of like a battery, thumping passionately and vigorously during the first half of my life, but with little juice left after being wrung through the divorce. Was I destined to live out the rest of my life with at most this sort of ghostly version of love, something that reminded me of love, maybe tasted a little bit of love? Maybe that's all we're allotted in life, one all-consuming 뜨거운 affair, and if you can't make it work, well, there you go. These are the questions that made divorce even more agonizing. The uncertainty of the world I was stepping into somehow made the world I was leaving behind, which is a really not fun world, look less uninviting. Now, I remarried. I met Anthony on OkCupid, of all places, and we've been married for almost 2.5 years. I woke up this morning and I had to stop myself from asking him, "Will you marry me again?" I know, it's so cheesy and so corny and so oba, but I'm 41 years old and I am silly and giddy and hot-headed and moody, but mostly I continue to marvel at how cluelessly I lived in my 20s and 30s, how little joy I really knew. I think for a long time, I believed that the right thing to do was just to kind of suck it up and live at, 70%, sometimes even 60%. You go to work in the morning and you toil away, and then you come back home. You barely have enough energy to do anything. I used to just go to McDonald's on my way home because there's a McDonald's right by my house, and I'd pick up a, super value meal, or I don't even remember what they're called anymore, supersized meal for my ex-husband and me, and I bring it home, and that's what we do. I wouldn't cook. I wouldn't have energy to cook. I wouldn't have energy to really do anything other than eat, kind of zombie-like watch TV, and then wake up the next morning and do everything all over again. I remember I used to visit the city a lot and go into downtown, and I'd visit the neighboring neighborhoods, the boroughs like Lakeview or Logan Square, Oak Street. I'd go shopping there. And I'd stare around at everyone, visit some of the coffee shops, and I'd wonder, am I ever going to be able to be happy? I'd wonder, am I ever going to be free enough to wander these streets and these neighborhoods as my own woman, instead of sort of tied down to the situation that I was in. And it wasn't just the fact that I was in a marriage that was making me unhappier and unhappier as the years went on, but it was just also this notion that I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do, but I was doing what everyone else needed me to do. Ultimately, I left that marriage and I found Anthony. And in retrospect, I was living at 70 to 60%. And I wish I could just explain to everyone how important it is to live at 100%. In that way, my heart really is like a kimchi heart. It's been salted, it's been aged, and now it burns. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and I hope you enjoyed our little chat. Please let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe so that you don't miss out on further chats and recipes. Have a lovely day.